Welcome back to another episode of the Blacklist Podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have Nicole Obrigavitch joining us all the way from Saskatchewan, Saskatchewan. Currently serving as the Executive Director of the Elizabeth Fry Society, Nicole's journey is one of remarkable transformation and resilience. Formerly a practicing lawyer, Nicole faced disbarment and imprisonment due to charges related to drug trafficking. However, her story doesn't end there. Turning her life around, Nicole now uses her experiences to empower and assist others. Join us as we delve into Nicole's compelling narrative, from the depths of her struggles to her inspiring work today, and learn how she's dedicating her life to making a difference in the lives of others. This episode, along with a host of other inspiring stories, can be found at theblacklistpodcast.com. Without further delay, Nicole Obrigavitch. What is going on, Nicole Obrigavitch? Said it right.
Yeah. Not much. Right. Good job. I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. How did we, through Dan, right? That's how we got connected, was through Dan?
Maybe, I'm not really sure. I'm on
I think it was through Dan.
Instagram a little bit. Yeah, it might have been through Dan.
Yeah, I've gotten introduced to a lot of Canadians through Dan, so yeah, I was trying. It's been a few months since we talked anyways, but yeah, I'm definitely excited to have you on. From what I hear a little bit before we started recording too, you got a crazy ass story, so
Yeah, a little bit.
just a little bit, right?
I kind of have a rule.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a little bit crazy. But I mean, now that I'm on the other side of it, it doesn't seem as crazy as it was at the time. And yeah.
What's your rule? You said you had a rule.
I have a rule. If I get asked to speak, I speak.
You did
So,
tell me that. You did tell me that.
yeah, in the last couple of years, I've had some pretty interesting requests. In the spring, I spoke in front of 140 judges, which was very, very nerve-wracking. It's bad enough when it's one judge, but it's 140 judges. Tomorrow night, I got asked to speak at shift change for the city police. So I'm doing that tomorrow night. And in January, I'm speaking in front of 170 lawyers. And the thing is this, I'm never not nervous. I'm always nervous. Even like I'm a little bit nervous right now, just because you never know, right? And I think
we're not no lawyers and police officers, so
but it's this weird situation where you're telling your story and let's be honest, I'm Thai. So, I think that every time I tell it, I remember something different, or that it might seem a little bit out of order, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah.
Do you think, how do you feel knowing now, like speaking in front of like these judges and police, officers and all that, knowing like did you, I'm sure you would have never expected to be doing that whatsoever. Like how does that make you feel?
To be honest, you know what? I didn't ever expect to be in recovery. I didn't ever expect that I was going to make it out of that. Because I was living a lifestyle that I think that I actually was like, I had a death wish, and I really didn't think that I was going to make it out. So it wasn't something that I thought about. And I think, when I first got out of prison, it was really difficult for me because I, at first, wasn't very transparent, because I was carrying a lot of shame, right? So I wasn't telling people that I went to prison, and I wasn't telling people I was in recovery, and I'm trying to get a job, and they're like, oh, why is this on your resume? You're a lawyer, and you have an 8-year gap of no employment, and now you're trying to get a job for minimum wage. Like, what's really going on? Right. And so I ended up relapsing over it because I wasn't transparent, and I wasn't walking in my story, and I wasn't able to talk about it. And that relapse scared the shit out of me. I don't know if I could swear, but it scared the crap out of me. And so that was when I decided it was time to step it up. And part of that was being able to be transparent and talk about it. And I think that's been good, not only for me, but I think it's also good because I get into spaces where other people might not get into, and I'm super vocal about it. And I want to talk about it, and I want to talk about how it happened to me, and I want to talk about how it could happen to anybody, really, right?
Yeah, like you were saying, being a lawyer and prosecutor for a period of time and whatnot to being on the other side of the bars, like that's definitely that it can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter how successful you
Absolutely.
are or not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. For
Well,
sure.
like what was your childhood like growing up?
So I am originally from Saskatchewan, and if you know anything about Canada, Saskatchewan's sort of like right smack in the middle of the country. It's kind of probably like Kansas or something like that, lots of crops, really flat, not a lot of people. I grew up in a town of 500 people, and figure skating and horses, and a big kind of cowboy family. But there's this one thing about this province that nobody really talks about is there's sort of a culture of alcoholism. And so you grow up drinking, town of 500, what you start doing when you're like 10 or 12 years old, you're like chugging beers and throwing beer bottles at signs. And, you party when you're sad, you party when you're mad, you party when you're happy. You party. Like, that's just what you do. Work hard, play hard. And, um, my mom had me when she was like 18 years old. And I grew up in this family that, just drank every day. And that didn't mean that they weren't successful. They absolutely were. Most of them owned businesses, drove expensive vehicles, and all of that. But my mom, she ended up letting my brother and I grow up with our great grandparents. And I think that there was like a little bit of a consequence for me as a kid with that, but not too much. I think mostly just the fact that I grew up around a lot of drinking. Like, it was normalized. And I've noticed since I've been back in Saskatchewan, it's still normalized. It's just something that people do here. They drink. So
Like how old were you when you had your first?
6. I think I was 6 when I had my first drink. And I really got like super loaded the first time. I was like 12. Me and my cousin were babysitting, and she was 10 and a half, and we split a 12 pack of beer and threw up all over my aunt's house. And then after that, it was just like every weekend. That was just how
I
it
thought
was.
you were gonna follow that up with you got super loaded at age 6. I was gonna be like, "How the hell does that happen?"
No, not 6. I was 12.
You wait
which
yeah,
which
you
isn't
wait.
much
You
better,
waited a little
really.
while.
Yeah. I was 8 when I had my first shot of Jack Daniels. And I didn't even want to do it. I just my stepdad at the time, the guy my mom was married to at that time, he was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
here, try it." And then like I tried Copenhagen, and I just I couldn't do the chew. It was so disgusting. But when I actually first tried like drinking something like on my own with my friends, I think I was like 11 or 12, and I was staying at my friend's house, and I don't know if you know, do you know the mudslides?
Mhm.
Yeah, well, so it's funny because with the mudslides, you're supposed to mix it with chocolate milk, and,
Yeah.
and so like they had the separate gallon of like of the alcohol, and I thought it was mixed together, so we just started chugging it, and it was just like, "Oh my god, nope, this isn't mixed together." So, I don't know, like, that's just, but it was normal for
Yeah.
me by the time I was 13 to have breakfast, to have eggs, drink a beer, and smoke a cigarette, like, that was normal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like, and it was acceptable. Like, my family, they didn't really care, like, there was always like an open bar when there was family events, and we would just like basically do whatever the heck we wanted. And on weekends it was kind of the same thing. We just like raid the liquor cabinet. I think that so my attitudes and my coping skills came from that. And I need to say that I absolutely don't blame my family for any of that, because it's normalized. That's just how it is. We have this really weird thing in Saskatoon where it's like this pub on pedals, and people drive around downtown Saskatoon with these bike pedal things getting loaded. And I'm like, yeah, that's about typical. That's about what it's like here. So
I
yeah.
I have to say, off topic but on topic because it's gonna confuse the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Is Saskatoon like the city, and like in Saskatchewan's like the state, like compared to ours?
it's a province, but yeah, same thing. So Saskatoon, Saskatchewan is where I live, and yeah, yeah,
Okay, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Saskatoon is technically like the town that you live in.
Right. There's like 300,000 people here. It's not that small. It's about 300,000.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Blacklist
No.
Podcast.
They're
If
just
you are tuning
drinking.
in with
They're
us for the
drinking
very
and
first
playing
time
music and
today,
driving
I'm
around.
going to go ahead and
And it
introduce
always kind
ourselves.
of
This lovely
like
lady to my
occurs
left
to
is
me
the lovely
that
Brianna Elizabeth. We
um
are missing swag tonight, and I am
it's
Jared
just it's
Blaine,
not
and we are the Blacklist
acceptable that
Podcast. And
you're riding
today's
around in the
guest
middle of
is the
downtown
executive director of the
where,
Elizabeth Fry
sometimes there's
Society of
families or there's people
Saskatchewan.
that are
She's an
struggling with
advocate for recovery as well as
addictions,
social
and
justice.
these
Once a
people
lawyer
are
who ended
acting
up getting
like total
disbarred and
clowns. I
convicted
have
for drug
fantasies about
trafficking,
throwing a
she
grenade
now
at
shares
them.
her stories to help others. Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from
I wouldn't
Saskatchewan,
really do
Canada,
that,
what
but
is
I have
going on?
fantasies.
Nicole Obrigavitch.
Anyways, I'm super triggered by
Said it
people,
right.
drunk people, and I can like I've
Appreciate you
worked
coming on.
in addictions for
Good,
on
good,
and
good.
off for the last 8 years,
How did
and
we, through
people
Dan,
that
right?
are
That's how
on
we got
drugs don't
connected, was through
trigger me
Dan?
like people that are drinking for some weird reason. I'm not really sure
I'm
why
sure,
that is,
I,
but I think it could
I
be
think it was
related
through
to my
Dan.
my childhood. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've gotten introduced to a lot of Canadians through Dan, so,
Yeah,
yeah, I was trying. It's been a few months since we talked anyways,
yeah.
but yeah, I'm definitely excited to have you on. From what I hear a little bit before we started recording
It
today,
was
you got a
beer.
crazy ass story, so
No, six was
just
wine.
a little
It
bit,
was
right?
it was baby
Okay.
duck wine. And my mom gave it to me
Mhm.
because I don't know why. But anyways. And
What's your rule? You said you had a
yeah,
rule.
like 12 beer. Me and my cousin, we weigh 100 pounds each. And
You did tell
there's
me that.
there's
You did
another
tell me
piece
that.
to this though. Like my mom and dad broke up when I was like 3, and that's why I ended up living at my grandparents. And my dad, that's a whole different thing, because while my mom's
I
family
bet.
had no involvement with drugs or anything like that, my dad definitely did. And went on my first drug run when I was like 8. My dad took us all down to LA to go to Disneyland, but he was basically using us as beards. He went and picked up
Yeah.
down
Y-
there, and I didn't know this until I was later on,
yeah.
but he introduced me to weed when I was
Listen, we're not
15.
no
He
lawyers
introduced
and
me to
police
cocaine when
officers,
I was
so
17, and he lived on the coast in BC. And so when I was like 15 to 17, I was like back and forth between Saskatchewan and British Columbia. So there was booze, but
mhm.
there was also drugs. The drug thing, my
do,
mom's family
do
had
you
nothing to do
think?
with that. That was
How
all
how
my
do you
dad.
feel
So
knowing now,
that was
like
kind of the
speaking in front of like these
next piece.
judges and police, officers and all that, knowing like did you? I'm sure you would have never expected to be doing that whatsoever. Like how does that make you feel?
Yeah, it was pretty normal. I mean, my dad, I kind of like, my dad was my hero, right? Because he wasn't ever there to discipline or anything like that, and he was always really cool, and he always had really young girlfriends, and he listened to really great music. And when we saw him, me and my brother, he was
Mm,
always up for a good time, right? I didn't recognize this when I was younger, but like he was always loaded. Like he would pick us up and he would be drunk, and he would be drinking beer all day and smoking weed. And the blow thing came later on. But yeah, so no, I thought he was my hero, you know. So I think that my attitude about that, yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah, you're good.
yeah. He yeah, and yeah, and I know that, and I was gonna jump into something because I'm picking up on that, but I think that my attitude about what I was looking for in a man, and I know this is so freaking cliche, but I did end up marrying my dad, like a man that was very similar to my dad. A lot of fun, but not somebody you want to be married to, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, like you were saying,
like my mom's
being a
family,
lawyer
very solid,
and
lots of integrity,
prosecutor
always
for
went to
a period
work,
of time and
like I
whatnot
said, work hard,
being on
play
the other side
hard.
of the bars, like
Word is
definitely
bond, that kind of
that
thing. But
it
my
can happen to
dad,
anybody. It doesn't matter how
if
successful
he
you are
told
or
you he was
not.
going to do something, you
Yeah.
had about a 10%
Well, like
chance of
what
him
was your
actually
childhood
doing
like
that.
growing up?
And so, I screwed around a lot from the time I was like 15 to 22, and I was back and forth, hitchhiking back and forth and getting drunk and getting high and whatever. And then I decided when I was 21, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to have a kid now. So, um, I ended up getting pregnant, and I kind of pulled my shit back together, and I got myself into university, and I moved back to Saskatoon, and I had my daughter. And then I ended up running into this guy that I'd known since high school, and he was dealing drugs. And he was living in BC and I was living in Saskatoon. And I was like, oh my God, I love him so much because, we know a lot of the same people. And he kind of reminded me of my dad. And he ended up moving back, and we ended up getting married like right before I went to law school. And I had bought a house, and I like had my daughter, and things were really great. And then I married this guy who's a drug dealer, and I'm trying to go to law school, and things like don't go well, if you can imagine. So I finished. Go ahead. You can go ahead. Yeah. I was just gonna, yeah. So we got married, and I finished law school, and I ended up getting a job as a lawyer, well, articling position first, in Vancouver, which is probably about 20 hours away if you're driving. It's right on the west coast. And we had been married for about 3 years at this point, and we ended up having another kid together. But what wasn't really public knowledge is things
Like
were
how old
not
were
good
you when
with
you had your
us.
first?
He could keep a job. He was even a crappy drug dealer. He always owed, his plug money. He would spend all of the reload money, and I'm trying to be a lawyer, right? And I'm not coping well, and he would disappear for weeks at a time. He was cheating on me, but I was all in
I thought you were gonna
because
follow
my
that up with
mom's
you got super
family,
loaded
they
at
stayed
age
married.
6. I
Like
was
my
gonna be like, "How
grandparents
the
were married for
hell is
76
that?"
years. My other grandparents were married for 60 years. And that's just what you did, right?
You wait
And
yeah,
growing
you
up in a
waited.
family where
You
there was a
waited a
lot
little
of
while.
partying, and I
Yeah.
saw that with my dad, I didn't
I
really
was
think
8
that
when
it
I had
was
my
kind
first
of
shot of
abnormal.
Jack Daniels.
So,
And I didn't
had
even
another
want to
kid.
do
So
it.
I've
I
got two
just
daughters at this
my
point. We
stepdad at
moved
the
to
time,
BC. I'm
the guy
trying
my
to
mom was
practice
married to at that
law.
time, he was
Things
like,
are
yeah,
are
he would
kind
try
of
it.
going okay, but not
And
really
then like
okay because
I
I'm
tried
drinking quite a
Copenhagen
bit
and I
still, like
just
pretty much every day
I
drinking,
couldn't do the
and
chew. It
I'm
was so
using a little bit
disgusting.
as
But
well. And
when I
then I get
actually first
pregnant
tried like
again,
drinking something
and
like on my own
he gets
with
in a
my
car
friends, I think I
accident,
was like 11,
and he gets
11 or
prescribed
12, and
OxyContin.
I was staying at my friend's house,
So
and I don't know
he starts using
if you know
OxyContin.
the
I
mud
start
slugs.
using
Yeah,
OxyContin, still trying to be a
it's funny because with the
lawyer.
mudslides,
Things start to get
you're supposed to
worse.
mix
He
it
becomes
with
physically
chocolate milk,
abusive,
and
and
so like
we're
they had the
broke all the
separate gallon of
time
like
because I'm
the
loaded all the
alcohol,
time,
and
and I end
I
up
thought it
getting
was mixed
disbarred.
together, so we just started chugging it, and it was just like,
So
oh my god, nope, this isn't mixed together. So I don't know, like that's just but it was normal for me by the time I was 13 to have breakfast, to have eggs, drink a beer, and smoke a cigarette. Like that was normal.
it was this really weird situation because while I was when I first was practicing, like I worked for an immigration firm, and I wasn't necessarily on salary. We had a fee splitting agreement, so I had to bring my own clients in, and whatever I made I had to split with my firm. And so if it didn't work, I didn't make any money, right? And so I think that they had to know that something was going on, because there was points of time where like I was coming in with black eyes. I wasn't coming in at all for a week. It was a bad situation. And that's actually when I ended up going to the attorney general and becoming a prosecutor, because I was like, I can't live like this. I'm not on salary. were using a copious amount of drugs. Like at that point, we were trading oxys for other drugs, and the drinking and everything. And
I have to say,
so I
off
got a
topic but
job
on
as a
topic because
prosecutor.
it's
Like
going
I
to
was
confuse the
a
shit out of
very
me.
high
Is
functioning addict.
Saskatoon
I
like
I
the
think
city
that
and like in
and like I
Saskatchewan
said,
like the
there was no
state like compared to
transparency.
ours?
When I spoke at that judges conference, it was really
But
funny because one of the other prosecutors that was in the office next to me is now
okay,
a
but
judge.
Saskatoon is
And
technically like the
she came up to
town
me and
that you
she's
live in.
like, "You don't remember me, do you?"
Okay,
And I'm
What?
like, "No." And she was in tears and she
Open.
said,
Yeah.
"I'm
give
blah
give me.
blah,
I gotta
and
grab
I
Chris'
had my
sweater. Give me one
office
second.
next to you, and we even went out for dinner
You're
with
glowing.
our husbands a couple times." And
It's
she said,
usually
"I
I look at
had
the camera and
no
I'm like,
clue
damn, you're
that
glowing.
any of
No,
this was going on."
you
And she said,
are.
"I'm
Am I
really sorry." I said,
pregnant?
"Why are you sorry? Like, why are you sorry?" So like I was
I'm
going
not.
to court
We're both
as
fixed.
a litigator, and people didn't know
No, not
that I
that
was
one.
high.
I have 3 and he has 3.
Like,
This one? Just not together. No. That's yours. There's nothing right here. There's a whole
yeah, there
I
certainly
just
is.
folded all my sweaters on the table. The black one.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
absolutely can function and hide all this heinous stuff from everybody around us. And
Yep.
it's insane looking back on it and being like, how did you not know?
Right.
How didn't you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I was the same way too. I mean, I was married, I had kids. I was, I did the whole thing, and nobody, other than my mom, only because I was buying, we, my mom were like trading pills back and forth. But even
Yeah.
then, like, I don't think she knew it was that bad. But 100%
I
functioning
think it's
addict.
even crazier with Nicole though, because the job that you had and the position that you
Yeah.
held, you were drinking.
Yeah, the drinking, I think we got to a point where the drinking wasn't really such a big thing, right? Because, when it's kind of social and lawyers, a lot
Yeah.
of lawyers drink a lot, and a lot of lawyers use blow a lot. And at first it was like me just hanging out with my other lawyer bros on the weekend, and like, you drink a bottle of wine and order up a half, and whatever. But it was Friday to Sunday, then it was Thursday to Sunday, then it was Thursday to Monday, and then it wasn't, drink a bottle of wine and then order. It was just order, 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 order. Like
Hmm.
it just, I stopped drinking. And I explained this to somebody the other day, and I think that this is probably really accurate because I grew up having alcoholism normalized, and my ability to cope was based on that as my normal. When things started really going sideways for me with my husband, I think that that's when the drugs sort of took over, because the booze wasn't helping me cope anymore. That was just something that I did anyways, right? And the drugs didn't help me cope either, but it got me out of my head enough that it was like an alternate reality, and I could, at least sort of get away from what was really happening. Because yeah, things were bad, like really, really bad. And none of my family knew because I was 2 provinces over. And I think like my cousin kind of knew because she's my best friend, and I think my actual best friend kind of knew because I would get loaded and get on the phone too, you know and I was miserable and hateful. And um when I finally went to prosecution, and what happened was that the firm I was working for went through a bunch of my financials and found out that I was double billing. So I was actually taking cash from my clients and then not reporting it to my firm, so I could get all the money and they wouldn't get any of the money. And like it was sloppy because I was high, and it wasn't even a large amount of money. It was $7,000, and it was so messed up at that point because like I was cashing my checks at Money Mart, which is like a check cashing place, and like not paying my rent. And my kids were getting to school some of the time, but not really. And then, so when I went to prosecution, and they figured out that I was double billing. Then they reported me to the Law Society, and I had to tell my boss at the Attorney General that I had been reported to the Law Society, and I was forced to resign. And they had no clue that that's what was going on. Like, it kind of blew my mind, because like, outwardly I'm a lawyer, and it seems like I'm my shit together, but at home and on, like, it was the worst mess possible, the worst mess possible. And so what
Mm.
kind of happened next was, after I got written up by the Law Society, I kind of like avoided it and started telling myself that I didn't care. I was like, I don't care. I don't want to be a lawyer anymore, anyways. And it was the drugs and booze. They were in the back of my head. And I was like, I don't want to be scrutinized. I don't want anyone like watching what I do. And, I'm not going to treatment. Fuck that. And I try to go to meetings, and that, like, I'd get out of the meeting and like get high immediately after. And it just got really, really, really dark. And I wasn't working, and he wasn't working, and he had no credibility, no street cred. Nobody was giving him anything for free. And he then got cut off of his Oxycontin. And basically, what happened was, my grandpa that I grew up with died, and I tried to keep working. I got a different job, but I got fired from that job. And I didn't go to my Law Society hearing, and I got disbarred. And the decision said right in the decision that if I would have showed up, that they were only going to suspend me for 6 months. So I got disbarred, and that didn't have to happen. And so I then tried to commit suicide.
I was gonna ask
And
how that made you feel.
yeah, really fucking lame. So I basically, that's the first part of burning down my life. But so I basically burned down my life, and tried to commit suicide. And my in-laws, his parents came in and took my kids. And they should have. Like, I wasn't functioning as a mother. I wasn't functioning as a person. And so I tried to go to detox. And in Canada, you could get into detox, but you can't get into treatment right away. So I went to detox, kind of dried out. But he's using still. He's still using, right? And he had now switched from oxys to heroin. And I'm trying to clean up, but it's not working, because he's not. And so it got worse and worse and worse. And then we started doing uh like Home Depot scams, and stealing palm trees, and catalytic converter. Then, like, all of it.
What are you gonna do with the
Like,
palm tree?
you
What
can
do you do
sell
with
them.
the
They're
palm tree?
expensive. They're expensive.
Really?
We would like hop over the greenhouse fence, and like throw a bunch of palm trees over, and then sell them to people for like $50 a palm tree, because they were like 100.
They're not like going and getting like the 20, 30-foot fucking
Not the
palm
big
trees
ones.
that you
It's
see
like
on the side
short.
of the road. They're going to, like she said, like greenhouses and getting the little
I was
baby
like,
palm trees that people can plant for
I'm like, what do you do
landscaping and
with
stuff.
what do you do with a palm tree? Like, what the fuck?
Going on the side of the road and just digging them up with some
Listen,
shovels. Yeah.
it was like,
I'm sure if you're desperate enough.
if you ordered it, we can get it. And like,
Yeah.
we hated each other at this point. Like, hated each other. So, you see those terrible couples that are in active addiction that are like shrieking and yelling and beating the shit out of each other. That was us. Like, it was the worst. Like,
Oh.
it was the worst. It was really bad. So this was going on, and we had gotten evicted, and I was like, okay, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to Saskatchewan. And I'm going to clean up, and I'm going to get my kids back. And so I go back to Saskatchewan. He's in tow, because also, ways and means. We were running mates basically at that point. And so we come back to Saskatchewan, and my family, they tell me not to go anywhere near my grandma, or they're going to call the cops on me. So like it had gone to the point where my family knew what was going on. and because my kids have been taken, and I tried to commit suicide, and I'd been to detox, and I did go to treatment for a week, but I got kicked out, and so come back to Saskatchewan. We get a place, and instantly, it's like the house on the block where all the shit is happening. But since we came from Vancouver and we knew people in Vancouver and we knew people in Saskatoon as well, we start doing drug runs, because we've got access to a bunch of money, and we start bringing in like quantity of meth. And he was a terrible, terrible drug dealer. And pretty much within like 6 months, he ended up owing like $50,000 to people. And we got evicted from our place. And that was it. Like, that's finally when I left. So when I left, I was like, okay, this guy, he doesn't know what he's doing. But I now know all of these people. And so I started dealing. Apparently I wasn't that bad at it, because like within a relatively short period of time, like I had like quite a clientele, and got myself in a bit of trouble, almost got murdered. I got my hotel door kicked in, and someone tried to beat me to death with a golf club and a hammer. Two guys. It's in the hospital for like a month, almost dead. And came out, continued to deal, because I had a death wish. Like I really didn't care if I lived or died. And because I wouldn't tell the cops who it was, and I knew who it was, basically that gave me more cred. And all of a sudden I'm selling more and more quantity, like huge amounts, probably, between $10,000 and $30,000 a day. And I didn't like, I didn't love that lifestyle. It just was how things worked out. I think that for me, I've got some ego issues, or I did anyways, before I did a set of steps. And I think the same thing that made me want to be a lawyer was the same thing that made me want to go to that next level when I was dealing drugs. And so I got myself hooked up with some pretty scary people. And the one guy that I was mostly gripping from, he was shady, and he ended up having the clubhouse wired and cameraed up, because he had flipped to the cops. And so I was stuck in this like huge sting operation, and I got busted. So yeah, so that
What a jerk.
was, oh, what a jerk.
And
Yeah, yeah, he's not
it was,
popular.
I bet.
and it was at that point where you had gotten where you had gotten convicted. Like
Yeah, so
like
I got,
how far from being
Okay.
disbarred to that?
oh, geez. Okay, so my first charges, I think I got my first charges in 2014, and I got disbarred in 2008. So like 6 years of basically running the streets, just, and the whole catalytic converter and all of that kind of stuff, that happened from like 2008 to 2010. And then we moved back to Saskatchewan in 2010. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in that 4 years. But 2014 is when I got charged. And I got out on bail and continued to sell drugs. And I got arrested, I think, 2 more times after that, like breach of condition kind of situation. And I finally, in 2015, the cops came to my house to do a condition check. And I was ready to go. I was just like, you know what, I've had it. And I just want to plead out and get this over with, because my life is just a shit show, and I can't continue to live like this. And I knew that if I didn't get out, that I would die.
So you were ready. You're at that point. You were just ready.
Yeah, absolutely. I was absolutely ready. I think that
You weren't scared. You weren't scared or nothing. It was more you were just done.
I think I kind of knew, what was going to happen, because like when I got arrested in 2014, the prosecution, they told my very temporary legal aid defense lawyer what they were seeking, and they were seeking 3.5 years at that point. And you know, because I could get out on bail, at first I thought maybe that I would be able to fight that charge, but that's not what happened, because I didn't know at the time that he had been cooperating with the police. And so when I got released on bail, I actually started dealing drugs for a different person or different organization, and then he started providing drugs again. So I was dealing for two different groups of people, and then it was like right a little bit after Christmas, and I got arrested again. This time the cops came to my house to do a condition check, and one of my conditions was that I wasn't supposed to have a cell phone, and I had 14 of them. So apparently that's a flagrant disregard of my bail conditions. So, anyways, I got arrested, and that was a really terrible part of my life as well, because I found out I was pregnant, and that was really bad, and I lost the baby in prison.
Jeez. Man, I'm sorry. When you got arrested, and you went into the courtroom and whatnot, did they recognize you from you being used to being a lawyer and a prosecutor and all that, or was it entirely different people?
No, because I
She probably
was
said
a
somewhere else.
practicing lawyer in BC, and
Oh, okay, okay,
I went to law school in Saskatchewan. And
okay.
I think like one of my really good friends from law school, she was a federal prosecutor. And
Really?
so I think that that was really tough for her, because people knew that we were friends in law school. I actually saw her the other night. We're good now. So there's that. Um,
I would hope so.
yeah, we are. Yeah, things have changed significantly since then. Let's just put it that
Yeah.
way. So
So
yeah, so
you
I
got what, 3.5 years?
no, I got 5, a little bit over 5. But like I got released from prison in 2016, and like I said, I had 33 months in, and then I relapsed, went back out for like 4 months, actually down there in Kansas. I wasn't even supposed to be down there, but I went down there. I met some guy online. I went down to Kansas, and um, yeah, was it a good time? I came back to Canada with my tail between my legs. It was pretty bad.
Jeez.
But yeah, I know. So then I came back to Canada, and then that's when I was like, okay, that's enough screwing around. I'm not doing this anymore. And I went back to Kamloops in BC as well, and that's where I got released. And I had been going to meetings and that sort of thing. And before I went down to the States, I kind of just dropped. Like I stopped going. I stopped doing my step work. My sponsor relapsed, and I was just like, whatever. And so then I started backsliding, and I'm convinced that that's why I relapsed. So when I came back to Canada again with nothing, I moved back to the community that I had been in recovery in, and I got a hold of somebody that I knew from the rooms, and she's like, "Yes, I'll sponsor you. Get your ass back here." And so I came back to that community, and I think I was only probably about 6 months clean, and I started working for an organization in community that supported people that um, basically streets to homes. Like, so it was transitional or supportive housing for people that had mental health or addictions issues. And I started working as a support worker for them. And I was very transparent about my past. And anybody who had listened to me, I would be like, yeah, so I've been to prison. And so, yeah, I'm in recovery. And I got that job. And then shortly after, the Elizabeth Fry Society of Kamloops, because there's 22 across Canada. I got a job with them, and I worked for them for almost 4 years before I came and worked for the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan. So yeah, I hit 5 years September 27th.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. I bet you.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I think when we talked, you were saying that you were coming up on 5 years.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah.
Jared had just
And
hit 5 years.
Yeah.
yeah. And absolutely, like, I think, the first time in, I didn't really get it, right? And by the way, I want to say that I don't think that NA and AA is for everybody. It worked for me. It works for a
Agree.
lot of different people, and that's great. But I think that, we're all different as humans, and some programs work better for other people, and some programs don't, and it is what it is. And I don't ever judge how people recover. I think that it's very personal.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the NA thing, it did work for me, right?
Right.
And just I still have the same sponsor. We actually just went to Peru together for a month, and she's got 15 years clean. It works for her too. And doing a set of steps and kind of understanding what surrender actually meant, because the first time I was in, like, I didn't drink the Kool-Aid. I was like, what is this shit? I don't even understand what these people are saying. This is a cult. I don't even like God. Like, what is going on here? And I was still full of excuses, and I don't think I was really open to making the changes that needed to be made. And so when I relapsed, like, I literally scared the shit out of myself, because I think, I rather quickly, within like 2 or 3 weeks, I lost like 25 pounds, and I was in psychosis, and the drugs like hit a lot different than they did when I was using every day. And so, like, yeah, I scared the crap out of myself. And I had done a lot of work sort of rebuilding with my family and my kids, and I was really, really ashamed that I relapsed. And it took me some time to sort of have those hard conversations again, but I did right away, because it's sort of, I recognized that that was kind of the key to all of it, right? The fact that when I was first released, that I wasn't able to talk about it, and that I wasn't able to talk about being in recovery, or that I wasn't able to talk about the fact that I had been to prison. I was too busy hiding pieces of myself to actually do the work to recognize where things were affecting me in a way that I needed to use to escape, right?
Yeah. How long did you have sober before you relapsed the first?
33 months.
Well,
33 months.
I said,
Okay,
yeah,
well,
I said
must have missed that.
2 months, but like, part of that, I was institutionalized, right? And I know that you can get drugs in prison, but I was really lucky, because I didn't go to Max. I ended up going to a healing lodge. And so it's like literally in the middle of nowhere, and no, like, I call it Club Fed, because like, in the middle of nowhere, horses, cultural teaching, sweat lodge, all the really great things, elders. And so there wasn't really drugs in there, right? And I actually went to treatment when I was in there. I got sent to treatment in Calgary, and I got parole after I got when I completed treatment. And so I think that that was helpful as well. And yeah, that relapse, 33 months. So I think I was on the out 20 months before I relapsed, right? But I think that, like,
Mm,
I can literally see where I started slipping into old behaviors again. And it's,
yeah.
for me, my triggers are emotional. And I have this well, I did anyways, I have had this need to attach myself to really toxic relationships. Like, my husband, I was with him for 14 years, right? And I loved him more than anything else on this planet. And at the time, I couldn't even see how fucked up our relationship really was, like, right from the beginning. Like, I didn't recognize any of that. And I think that the fact that I was using to mask my pain, to get away from how much pain I felt as a result of that relationship not working out the way that I wanted it to, should have been a bigger trigger to me. But like I said, I wasn't, the buy-in wasn't there with the program. And so I didn't understand all the pieces that you get when you actually do a set of steps, and you understand about, your self-respect and your self-worth and all those pieces that you get from actually doing a set of steps. And so backsliding for me was backsliding into another relationship where this person was essentially the exact same person as my husband in another body. Like, everything was the same really. And so I go down to the States thinking that we're going to be sober together because I met him on a recovery site on Facebook. Like, come on, bro.
Mhm.
It's fucking ridiculous. And I get down there and I'm like, this guy's on meth. And if I would have been properly healed, I would have taken my ass back to Canada. But no, it's not what I did. Like I stayed down
I mean,
for
it doesn't always happen that way because like we met
no.
we
But
met
this is what I'm
through
saying.
the
I
podcast.
was broken. I was broken, and that's why that
Yeah,
happened. Like, I mean, you guys,
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
different thing. So you met on a recovery website?
No, well, we met through this podcast. I started this podcast a couple years ago, and she met me through a mutual friend who had been on the podcast, and then we lived across the United States from each other. So
I love that for
here
you.
we are,
Like,
a year and a half
I love
later.
that. I love that for you.
It's pretty
I love
nice.
that for you. And listen, I don't, I'm not using the fact that we met on a recovery site as a
But it just
negative.
shows too, like, being at different points in our lives, like you said, you were
Yeah.
still broken,
Yeah.
and when you got down there and you realized that if you were in a better place, you would have,
Yeah.
kicked rocks
Yeah.
going back up to Canada, but you
Yeah.
weren't, and it just shows that accountability and the self-awareness
Yeah.
can give you
Right.
completely different outcomes.
Right. And it wasn't there. Like I didn't really recognize that my triggers are emotional, right? I think
Mm.
one of the most profound things that came after I got back into recovery this time was I was taking a mental health first aid class, and um the teacher, she's a psychologist, she was talking about how our brains can't differentiate between physical pain and emotional pain. And I was like, that's deep because, that's what I was treating. I wasn't treating physical pain by using OxyContin and heroin. I was treating emotional pain, right? And so, that's just what I knew how to do. And so I've now been single for 5 years, which is a really good thing, right? Because I've needed to take that time to work on myself and work on my career and my relationships with my family. And coming back to Saskatchewan has been this really great thing for me because I got released in British Columbia, and I got my career going there, and I bought a house with my mom and my kids. My younger kids they're 21, 24. They moved in with me there, and I was in recovery there, and I'm going to meetings, and I've got my sponsor, and but I never used there, right? That I didn't ever use there. And a lot of the people that I needed to make amends to were here in Saskatoon. And I think that for me, it's creator. My higher power is my creator. And I think that when that job got posted and Chantel was like, hey, come and take this job, you need to take this job. That was like one of those, higher power kind of moments. And I was like, I don't
Mhm.
want to go back there. Like, I don't want to go back there because I left in handcuffs. I did so much dirt there. I was crazy. I was terrible. I
Mhm.
was not a nice person. And I was like, there's gonna be people that I'm gonna run into and I'm gonna have to process so much. And my husband is still here. He's still using, and he unfortunately also like is sick. And my kids haven't talked to him in 8 years, and I was like really worried about running into him because he was very physically abusive with me. And um but I was like, I just feel like it's something that I need to do, that I need to come back here. And so I've been back since February. And so many things have happened since I got back that are all really positive. Like my brother and I weren't speaking, and he now lives across the street, and we're super tight. My oldest daughter, who's 31, she's here, and so I've been able to like make some things up to her. My extended family, like I've been invited to a bunch of family events, and that's great. And like I'm meeting with like politicians and ministers and police officers. And I was at a law foundation event the other night, and like our organization is funded by the law foundation. And, I'm getting to go back into those institutions where I was actually held as an inmate. Right. And,
Mm.
so I've taken all these really negative things that have happened and turned it right around. And so I'm getting into spaces where other people that have the same type of lived experience as me might not be able to get into. And I'm super vocal about it. And the fact that I am so transparent is really helping, because I just feel like I'm supposed to be here, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. So what do you do for work exactly?
Okay, so I work for an organization called the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan. And there's 22 Elizabeth Frys across Canada, and all of them kind of do different things. But primarily, we're an abolitionist organization. So we support women that are in conflict with the justice system. And we do prison in reach, institutional, like provincial inreach, federal inreach. So we monitor conditions of confinement to make sure people's rights aren't being abused while they're incarcerated. But we also do things like bail programming and reintegration programming and addiction programming. And we have like a cultural component. And in Kamloops, I had a bunch of housing when I worked for Kamloops Fry, but here we don't have any housing. So that's something that I've been pushing for since I got into the province, because there isn't the kind of supports that people with complex needs need here. So I'm like constantly like writing media releases, and I've done quite a few TV interviews and stuff since I got here, because I'm trying to make sure that we can provide support to keep people out of
Mhm.
institutions, because it's one thing providing support for people that are in institutions, because that's important as well. But unless there are supports when people are released, and I'm talking like addiction supports, and just having your basic needs met, you're almost always going to end up back in jail.
Mm.
And I think that that's something that has been largely ignored in this province. There's a lot of things around homelessness going on right now in community, and it's a lot different than BC. Like they don't have the same sort of services that they did in BC. So lots of work around that.
There you go. I mean, I think that no,
Does that make
I
sense?
think well,
I think,
I just wanted to ask because like for people that are like listening and stuff like what kind
yeah,
of if they wanted to reach out for
yeah,
resources or something, really.
yeah. So Elizabeth Fry, at this point in Saskatoon, we basically, do institutional inreach, we do bail planning, we do reintegration planning, we have an addictions program. It's an outpatient addictions program. We do institutional inreach, and yeah, but if people, and it's for women, and people that identify as women. So if they need supports, they can absolutely reach out. Um, I have an Instagram page that I end up talking to people on all the time. I started it like about 2 weeks after my relapse when I came back to Canada. I was like, I'm gonna like start following some recovery pages, and I started an Instagram page, and I kind of post on there every day, but I post for me and I also post for other people as well because, I get a lot of people that reach out to me just to, talk about what's going on for them or how they might be able to find supports. And I think that's important because the connection piece is really important as well. And yeah, so I end up talking to people kind of all over the world about recovery, and I think that that's great because it's not always easy. And I think that people need to have that connection and the ability to reach out to people. And sometimes it's easier to reach out to a stranger than it is to people that you know.
Yeah. What's that
Yeah.
Instagram page?
It's not anonymous Nick.
I will make sure to put that in the description. That way they have the
Yeah.
correct spelling and whatnot. So Chantel sent you that post, the job posting. Does she work for the same company, or does she work for something different?
No, she used to work for Elizabeth Fry. And I'm not going to go into Chantel's story
Yeah.
because it's a good one also. But she used to work for Elizabeth Fry, but now she works for an organization called Straight Up, and they support people that are wanting to leave gang life. And in Saskatchewan, there are a lot of issues around gang involvement, and especially in institutions. Like once you're basically involved in this lifestyle, I was on the gang unit, and once you are involved in the lifestyle, you that's just sort of like the next thing that happens. It's pretty pronounced in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, it's funny because I was doing an interview with somebody here in the States, and we were talking about and he knows he knows about the gang life up there pretty well, but he me and him were like, damn, like Canada has gangs, Canada has drugs. Like we just never thought about it, but we were both sitting there before, like, and I'm just like, damn, I can't believe that.
Yeah, I
That's like
mean,
that's like
I think
thinking, yeah, go ahead.
it's a little different, I think. Depending on, I mean, I feel like it depends what city you're in, right? It's probably the same down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure if you came across gangs in Kansas, they'd be a little bit different than they would be here in New York.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, for sure, for
yeah. You
sure.
might have a
Like
gang
Definitely.
of
in
you might have a gang of
Saskatchewan,
rednecks in Kansas.
yeah, Kansas was weird. I'm not going back there ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll support that.
Anyways, he's in prison right now. So and like we're still friends. But yeah, I mean jails, institutions, and death. Like that's true shit. Like that's how it works, right?
Mhm.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
No, the cool thing though is your comeback. Like I was, as everybody that comes on, the show, and it just goes to show we have people from all different walks of life come on, and it's
Yeah.
just it's cool to see because you can have somebody that used to be a fucking prosecutor and a lawyer and then going to prison and then coming out and turning their life around, and then you got people who
Yeah.
they've been to prison 33 times, and they've been detox 20 times and overdose and this and that, and
Yeah.
they're able to come back and just it's the comeback is the biggest thing at the end of the day. Like
Yeah.
we like to
Yeah.
focus on the comeback because we
Yeah.
we did we did a episode last night with Claude Olette, and he's almost got on TikTok. He's got like almost 500,000 followers, and he spent 15 years, yeah,
Yep.
15 years
Yeah.
in prison and whatnot, and he was just like, yo, I do not like to talk about prison. I don't glorify prison. Like this makes me uncomfortable to talk about it. But it's the come up, and I'll be honest, I forgot where I was going with my train of thought right here.
Well, I was going to say thank you to Nicole. Thank you for being, having the job that you have. And clearly you have passion for what you're doing,
I do. I
and thank
really
you
do.
for, speaking up and advocating to try and get all the resources generalized for this company all across Canada. So one area doesn't have more available than the other. And I think that's really important, to have. I can't, I
Yeah.
can't think of the
Well,
word.
Yeah, no, I always just think about, and I'm not trying to bring it back to myself or whatever, but I think that it makes it kind of easier for me to understand. People are only as good as their options and their choices, and you can't make good choices if you don't have options, right? And so I was actually meeting with a government minister the other day because I'm begging around for money all the time, and we were talking about the difference between being released from a federal institution and a provincial institution. When you're released from a federal institution, you get parole and you get support. They actually make you live in like a community residence, and they monitor what you're doing, and you have to do piss tests every week, and you got to see your parole officer every week. And when you get released from a provincial institution, it's to the street, bro. Like, it's like, get out. And I said to him, I'm like, if you're releasing people to the street that were probably homeless before they got arrested, and they're homeless when they get released, I said, what do you think that they're doing as soon as they get out for money? And I said, I'm going to tell you what I did. By 10 o'clock, I was dealing drugs again. That's what I was doing. And, and I'm coming from a place of privilege. Like, I never, ever pretend that I'm exactly like the women that I was incarcerated with, because 97% of the inmates in the provincial institution in Saskatchewan are Indigenous. And not a lot of white girls in there. And it's not because Indigenous people are bad. It's because generational trauma and residential schools and all the crazy shit that's going on up here because of colonialism. And that's why there's Indigenous gangs, right? And I'm like, so if we don't provide housing and supports, how do you expect these people to do any better? Like, how do you expect someone to change their life? It's not possible. And so like, I know how hard it was for me when I got out, like, just admitting that I had a record now, and that I had a drug addiction and all this, and I've got 2 university degrees, okay? And I had a family that basically supported me despite whatever they had going on or whatever. So let's talk about somebody that grew up in foster care, or let's talk about somebody that had abuse issues when they were growing up, or were institutionalized for different reasons, or grew up with a brother that's in gang life, whatever, etc., etc., etc. If there isn't any other options in community, you are setting people up to fail. And this summer, there's a capacity of 166 for the women's provincial institution. They had 273 women in there. 273. So they're 110 over capacity pretty much. And they were double bunking SAG and secure. And it, like, just a shit show. And so somebody needs to talk about this, because nobody's really sympathetic towards people once they've been arrested, or once you're in addiction. People say crazy shit, and they don't really give a fuck. And I do give a fuck, and I'm loud about it, and I'll continue to be loud about it. Because let's talk about normalizing things. You normalize drinking or whatever. Well, let's normalize giving a fuck about people. And it gets cold here, really, really cold. And so yeah.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate what you do. Thank you for coming on and spending the last hour with us, and just sharing your
Thanks
story
for
with us.
asking me.
Yeah, no, definitely. Everybody's got a story. It doesn't matter big or small. It's still a story. And it sometimes that one, whether it's a big story, little story, that may be one person, they just might need to hear that just for them to keep going. And so we never shy anybody away. It's always a good thing at the end of the day, what we do. We're loud and proud as well on this end. So
Perfect.
Everybody go follow Nicole, go follow the Instagram page, reach out to her if women, if you need any resources or whatnot, regarding Elizabeth Fry. And again, I'll put the links in the description. And do you want to say anything else before we wrap up? Good?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that right there wraps up another episode of the Blacklist podcast. We hope that today's conversation left you feeling inspired and uplifted. And remember, Each one of us has the power to spread hope and positivity in our own unique way. If you've enjoyed today's episode and would like to be part of the journey here so you can help, please follow or subscribe on your favorite platform, like and comment. Don't hesitate to like and leave a comment. Every single interaction helps us get closer to reaching people that might need to hear these words. And as always, share it with your friends and family. You never know somebody that can use a little bit of hope and positivity. And again, no matter what life throws your way, there's always a reason to hold on to hope. And until next time, signing off.